Okay, Latin 1, we're now going to read together the next story of stage 13. You may remember in the story from last week, we ended on a kind of a cliffhanger. We learned that Salvius was arriving angry because there was a conspiracy among the Contiaci. And the last sentence was, Rem nara, tell the matter. And so now we're going to learn the story of what happened with this conspiracy. Varika rem narravit. Varika, now again, what tense is this verb? That determines how we're going to translate it. Told, if it were narrabat, we would say was telling, but narravit, told the matter. Nos apud Cantiacos eramus, quod Salvius metallum novum visitabat. Nos goes with, of course, the mus ending. We were. Where were we? Apud Cantiacos. Now, the word apud is an interesting word. When you have apud before a people or a tribe, you're going to translate it as among. Okay, so in other words, apud with a plural, Cantiaci, nominative plural, os, accusative plural. Apud before a plural means among. If, however, you have the word apud before a singular name, okay? If I were to say, for instance, apud caecilium, and you use the accusative with apud. If you have apud before a singular name, it means at the house of. So again, apud Cantiacos, among the Cantiaci. Apud Caecilium, in the house of Caecilius, or at the house of Caecilius. We were among the Cantiaci, quote, because Salvius visitabat. How do you translate that verb? That's right, was visiting. What was he visiting? A new mine. Metallum means mine in the sense of a place where people go and dig metal. Hospes noster erat Pompeius optatus, vir benignus. Our host was, and Pompeius optatus is just his name. Our host was Pompeius optatus. Vir benignus tells us a little bit more about him. He is a vir benignus, a kind man. In metallo laborant multi servi. Look at this, people. This is the shape of things to come. For the entirety of Latin, Book 1, this verb would have always been at the end, okay? It would have been like in metallo multiservi laborant. Now here it is in the middle. And in the mine, we can still translate the verb last if you want, okay? In the mine, many slaves work. But even in English, by the way, even in English, you could say in the mine. Oh, by the way, this is a typo. Okay, just ignore this. This should be mine. In the mine work many slaves. Get ready, people. You are going to much more frequently have your main verb not in the end of the sentence. Quamquam servi multum ferrum e terra effodiebant, Salvius non erat contentus. Although the slaves. Quamquam is my favorite word in the entire Latin language. Here's the reason. The word quamquam takes the considerable fun of saying quam, and it doubles it. Although the slaves, what were the slaves doing? Effodiebant. Although the slaves were digging, here's what they were digging. Multum ferrum. Those of you who have studied some chemistry or physics, take a wild guess from your knowledge of the atomic symbols. What is that? A lot of iron. Although the slaves were digging a lot of iron a terra out of the ground, Salvius non erat contentus. Salvius was not happy. Folks, you're about to start learning more about Salvius, and you're not going to like him. The slaves are doing their best. They're digging a lot of iron out of the ground, and he's still not happy? What's wrong with him? Salvius servos adse vocavit, et inspexit. Here's something else that's going to start happening a lot in our Latin, okay? Here's a verb. Here's another verb, okay? This is why it becomes increasingly important that you read the entire sentence before you start translating. Because what's going to happen, if you have one verb, you want a full stop right here, people, okay? When you have a verb, you want to stop right here. You want to translate everything here before you start dealing with this information, okay? So, Salvius called the slaves. Servos is the object of vocavit. Where did he call the slaves? Ad se, to himself. Now and only now should you translate what follows the verb vocavit. And inspected, understood them, okay? Now Latin, there is a word for them. It would be eios, okay? The word eios would be translated as them, but Latin doesn't like using it if the context makes it clear who he's inspecting. These two verbs clearly are both going with Salvius, and so servos is the object. I mean, technically you could say Salvius called the slaves to himself and inspected the slaves. You could even translate it that way. But a better English translation turns servos into them. Unus servus aiger erat. One slave, now this is of course a word we've never seen, so you just look it up in the dictionary. One slave was sick. Okay, one slave was sick. You know it happens, people get sick. The slave's still working, but he's clearly sick. Salvius servum aegrum ex ordinibus traxit et clamavit. Here it is again, people. Here's a verb. There's a verb. Okay, so again, full stop. Okay, translate everything from one verb before you move to the next verb. Salvius dragged. Traxit is the past tense of traho. Salvius dragged. Who did he drag? He dragged the servum aegrum, the sick slave. Where did he drag the sick slave from? Out of the rows. Now, ordinibus means the rows of people. So remember, Salvius wanted to inspect the slaves. So they got all the slaves. They're all lined up in rows. Salvius is walking. He's inspecting them. And he dragged the sick slave out of the rows. Et clamavit, and shouted. Here's what he shouted. Servus aiger est inutilis. A sick slave. If utilis means useful, what would inutilis mean? A sick slave is useless. Ego servos inutiles retinere nolo. Here's one of our new irregular verbs. And remember, irregular verbs take an infinitive, which ends almost always in re, to complete the action. I don't want to keep useless slaves. So these are both accusative endings. You know that the os has to be accusative. The es can be accusative, and it clearly is accusative here since it's going with servos. Postquam hoc dixit Salvius carnificibus servum tradidit. Postquam, after. After he said this, what did Salvius do? Tradidit. He handed over. What did he hand over? Here's your accusative object. He handed over the slave. Now here's your dative plural object. He handed over the slave to the executioners? Wait a minute, Salvius, this slave is sick. Why don't you just send him home so he can get better and come back and work another day? That's not what Salvius does, people. Now, this word for executioner, this is kind of gruesome. The root carne is the same as the Spanish word carne, meaning flesh or meat. The root fic comes from the Latin verb facere, to make. So in other words, the executioner literally is the one that makes somebody meat. That's really gruesome. Carnifices eum statim interfecerunt. What did the executioners do? Statim, immediately killed him. Salvius has actually just killed a slave for being sick. Hic servus tamen filium habebat. This slave, however, had a son. Now, yes, this is an imperfect verb. I ordinarily want you to translate this as was doing an action, but we've talked before how the verb to have and the verb also to live, habitat, it seems almost like an over-translation to say this slave, however, was having a son. So I would like you to translate imperfect as was having, but with those verbs, you certainly have permission to just turn it into a regular past. Nomen erat alator. His name was Alator. Isn't that a great name for somebody that's about to seek vengeance? Alator. Alator patrem suum vindicare voluit. Now here is the perfect tense of the irregular verb volo. Volo I wanted, voluit he wanted. Volo I want, voluit he wanted. Alator wanted. Now again, infinitive is where the action is completed. He wanted to avenge. And the object of vindicare, here's your object. He wanted to avenge his father. I mean, who wouldn't? Itaque, ubi ceteri dormiebant, alator pugionem capit. Now, there's a reason that I have put the dictionary entry of this verb down here, because now that you have entered book 2, the format of the dictionary has changed. From now on, the dictionary is going to give you, the first form here is the I form in the present. So capio means I take. The second form in the dictionary is the infinitive. Remember, infinitives almost always end in re, and that would be translated like you have here, to take. The third form you have is the perfect tense in the I form. Remember, that's the perfect tense ending for ego. So the word capi would mean I took, okay? And so, ubi ceteri, when the others, dormiebant, were sleeping, imperfect tense, were sleeping. What did Alator do? Here it is, people. In book 1, here was the format of the dictionary. I remember telling you frequently when we first learned the perfect tense, you need to look at the second form. If the second form looks like what you have in your text, make it past tense. Now, however, you have to shift a little bit, people. From now on, you need to look at the third form. So how is capit like capi? Well, they both have a long E vowel here instead of the A of the present tense. And so capit would mean took. Alator took a dagger. You just know what he's going to plan on doing with that, right? Postquam custodes elucit, cubiculum intravit. After he slipped past the guards, Now, what English word might be related to elucit? In the present tense, it would be eludo. Eludo, I slip past. Elusi, I slipped past. So the English word related to this is to elude. If you elude someone, you kind of slip past them and get away from them. After he slipped past the guards, cubiculum intravit. He entered the bedroom. In hoc cubiculo salvius dormiebat. In this bedroom, now we've been seeing a lot of forms of the word hic in different cases. We're going to more systematically study and learn these in an upcoming lesson. But for now, if you see a little word that starts with an H and it ends with a C, it's just one of the case forms of the word that means this. In hoc cubiculo, in this bedroom, Salvius dormiebat. Salvius was sleeping. Tum alator, dominum nostrum petiwit et vulneravit. Then alator. Now, for the verb petiwit, the meaning of this verb that I want you to really first assume is to seek, but it can mean to attack. Then alator attacked our master and wounded him. Once again, people, here's a verb, there's a verb. Frequently, you're going to resupply an object kind of understood. It would not be a good English translation, for instance, to say, then alator attacked our master and wounded. That would not be a good English translation. You need to add something. You could say, then alator attacked our master and wounded our master. You could say that, but better English, just turn it into him. Dominus noster erat perterritus. Our master was terrified. Manus ad servum extendit, et veniam petiwit. Okay, if we were still in class together, Latin 1, when we do this lesson, I pause here and I say, there is something in this slide that you have never seen before. And I pause and I say, if you think you see it, raise your hand and tell me, there is something in this slide that you have never seen before. So what I'm going to do, since we're not in class, and I would ask people, and then eventually somebody gets it always, and I congratulate them for being the person that saw it. I'm going to invite you instead, after you've seen this video, or in fact, right now, if you want to pause right now, if you think you see it, pause right now and come into the Google Hangout and tell me if you think you know what is on this slide that you have never seen before. Okay, let's go on. He extended his hands to the slave. And once again, people, we're seeing so much of this. Here's a verb. There's a verb. In this case, however, the second verb has its own object. He extended his hands to the slave and sought mercy. Now, what would be a more contextual translation? What do you do when you're seeking mercy? It's a little more extreme than seeking. I think if you wanted to, you could translate this. He extended his hands to the slave and begged for mercy. After all, he's just been wounded by a dagger, and this slave intends to use the dagger again and kill him in vengeance for killing his father. Now, here's the thing. Alator should not have hesitated. Alator should have finished what he came there to do. But Alator apparently, as Salvius is begging for mercy, does pause. And unfortunately, folks, here's what happens next. Custodes tamen sonos audi verunt. The guards, however, heard sounds. In cubiculum ruerunt et alatorem audacem interfecerunt. They rushed, ruerunt. Where did they rush? In cubiculum. Now, in cubiculo, in the bedroom. This is the ablative. We learned this, I think, just days before we went into distance learning. So again, the O ending following this preposition, that's the ablative. And the ablative following in means in. But this is not ablative. What is this, people? That's right, it's accusative. When you have accusative following in, you're going to translate it into. So they rushed into the bedroom, and what did they do? Killed the bold alator. Wow, what a story, people. Okay, so again, since you meet 3 times this week, this was a little more Latin than last week. So review this video lesson more than once. Take notes using the PDF. I do always urge people, even if you went through this with me in the video, go back on your own and retranslate it. It'll remind you of things from the lesson. You'll have a mini Socrative on Wednesday, which will be some questions to kind of check your progress. And then your actual full Socrative for you this week will be Friday. Have a good week.